All right, so a lot covered just moments ago in the Oval Office, and we want to get to some of that now. There was discussion at the end of the conversation from President Trump about the impact of socialism. You heard how seriously he is taking what he really calls more of a threat of communism and Marxism that we're seeing in some of these candidates. Mike Pompeo is here, former CIA director, former Secretary of State, and now a Fox News contributor. So we absolutely want to talk about Iran and the Doha meeting that's coming up tomorrow that the president referenced, Secretary. But I want to put this poll up first because I know how passionately you feel about this country and our history. This Gallup poll, as we head into the 250th anniversary, only 33% of Americans say that they are extremely proud to be American, and that's down from 55%, a little more than 20-point drop since 2001. What do you make of that?
Boy, it's hard to know what to make of it, but you see that playing out in these Democrat primaries, right? These folks who are running as Democrat socialists or whatever they're calling themselves these days, I promise you that number amongst them is 95% who aren't very proud of America. I think those of us who have spent our lives working hard, most Americans are still very proud of this nation. We all have a responsibility to make sure that they continue to be, and that we rightfully are worthy of that, folks being proud of the United States of America. And make no mistake about it, I'm very confident that the country is going to continue down a path as we mark this 250th anniversary. Most folks actually do appreciate how great it is to be an American citizen, how lovely it is to have that blue passport.
And they're not all from other countries attending the World Cup.
No,
Some of them actually live here.
That's exactly right.
All right, so let's talk about, you heard the president say that the talks are going to take place in Doha tomorrow. We saw a lot of action. We can put this up on the screen. A lot of kinetic action between Iran and the United States. They hit our base of the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain over the weekend. What do you expect from these Doha talks? How much confidence do you have in talking to this regime and the IRGC?
Martha, almost none. Look, I think it's worthy to go there and have the conversation. I guess that's fine. But if anyone thinks that you're going to find an Iranian moderate or an Iranian IRGC member who thinks that the last 47 years have been a mistake, I've just never seen that in my time in government service in the House or as the CIA director. These are theocrats. These people they have an ideology that is deeply buried. They are not turning over a new leaf. They fundamentally believe the United States should not exist and Israel shouldn't either.
So we know from history how much they love to drag things out. So this is what the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, said about Iran's control of the Strait and how they feel, how they see it. And this is a soundbite. Let's play it.
The Strait of Hormuz, under the management that will be undertaken by Iran, will return to its pre-war capacity within 30 days, after the obstacles have been removed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. No other institution or country bears any responsibility in this regard under the Memorandum of Understanding signed between Iran and the United States.
And meanwhile, the IRGC continues to warn vessels that they need to seek Iranian authorization and cross through the designated route closer to the Iranian side, or they can't guarantee their safety.
Martha, this is exactly what I was saying before. That statement proves the point, right? This MOU is clearly violated by that statement. The statement says it'll be an open international waterway, and the Iranians are choosing to pretend that that wasn't so. Look, my guess is that there are many different voices, not about the ultimate goal, the destruction of Israel and the United States, but about the tactics, how to get there. To your point, to delay, to play this out, to pretend, yeah, we're going to get this done and we'll wait for President Trump to leave. We should have our eyes wide open. The Iranians are no more going to allow free and open access to the Strait of Hormuz than a man in the moon. They think they have an economic leverage on the United States of America. They believe they have the military capability to do that. And so we're going to have to go pry this out of their hands through use of force. I see no other way to achieve what is the proper objective for our mission, and the one that President Trump had laid out since the beginning.
Yeah, and the president has talked about potentially returning to finish the job, as many people put it. But there's clearly two different camps on how this should be approached. This is Vice President Vance talking about what he sees as a possibility for diplomacy that has not existed over the past 47 years. Watch this.
fundamentally, it is a much different group of people. If you think of like the last 47 years of American relations with Iran, we have never had this level of direct or indirect coordination. We've never had this level of direct communication between the highest levels of their society and the highest levels of our political leadership. So something has fundamentally transformed.
Do you agree with that?
I don't buy it at all. I hope he's right. I am not in those conversations, but it seems unimaginable to me. It may be that there's more communications, but make no mistake about it, the Iranian regime has not turned over a new leaf. You can see it. They're still trying to kill Americans. They're destroying our property. As we sit here today, we're now less than 24 hours out from them having fired at American military facilities. I think that tells the tale.
Yeah. Do we know how much damage was done to the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain?
So I don't know what was done in the last 48 or 72 hours, but I have seen photos from the previous strikes.
Yeah.
The damage was material. It will take a fair amount of effort to rebuild and reconstitute those capabilities.
Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, former CIA Director Mike Pompeo, always good to have you with us. Thank you very much, sir. Good to see you here in New York.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.